Hello YouTube land. This is the Comic Book Ninja back with another comic book video, and I'm continuing my series on undervalued comics. Today I want to talk about solo or self-titled books, solo features that I feel that are undervalued. These are the first self-titled or solo feature comics in this series. The first one you see here is Iron Man and Submariner #1. This book is, in my opinion, a very undervalued comic. Why? I say it's because this book is not only a #1, it's the first self-titled book for Iron Man and Submariner in the Silver Age. This book predates both Iron Man #1 and Submariner #1, and the story continues into those titles, Submariner 1 and Iron Man #1. This is where the story starts out and it finishes in Iron Man #1 and Submariner #1. So this one shot is basically the precursor to Iron Man #1 and Submariner #1. And also, this book is still pretty cheap in high grades. You can get graded 9.0s, 9.2s, 9.4s for like under 500, and then ungraded, you can still probably get a high grade copy for about $100, if not less. Mid-grade books, yeah, you can find real cheap. So for a 50-year-old Silver Age comic, that's pretty good. This book came out in 1968, so it's like a 51-year-old comic as of the shooting of this video. So I feel this book is very undervalued compared to, say, Iron Man #1 or even Submariner #1. Oh, by the way, this particular issue is high grade. I paid only $20 for it at a store for a 50-year-old comic. That's pretty good. Next we have Submariner #1. This particular comic, if you've seen my other videos, my previous video on undervalued comics, talking about Fantastic Four #4. This is the Submariner's first solo book in the Silver Age. Now, he had a solo book in the Golden Age, but this is his first solo book in the Silver Age. This book came out in 1968, the same year that Marvel published many other #1s, like Iron Man #1. I think they came out like with Hulk 102, Captain America 100, Doctor Strange 169, Captain Marvel #1, Silver Surfer #1. So 1968 was a year in which Marvel released a whole bunch of #1s, and this was among them. But compared to a lot of the other ones, this one is still very, very undervalued and still affordable in high grades. You can still get a 9.0, a CGC 9.0 for about $500, which is cheap compared to other first issues of this era. Um, and like I said before in my earlier video, Submariner is a very underrated character. He is Marvel's basically the first ever major character in the history of Marvel when it was timely back in the Golden Age. He predates Captain America and the Human Torch, the original Human Torch, when he came out in Famous Funnies #3. The only other book from this era, which I would say is probably worth less than Submariner #1, is Captain Marvel #1. But Captain Marvel is dead, and he's pretty much stayed dead since his death in the 1980s. So I wouldn't even consider Captain Marvel #1. Undervalued. Nobody really cares except for the new Carol Danvers version. But Submariner, I think, still has huge potential as a character. He's just a very, very fascinating, underutilized major character in Marvel Universe. So Submariner #1 is a good bet. If you don't want to spend that much on Submariner #1, I would go after Tales to Astonish #70. This is a CGC 9.2 example. This is the first solo feature for the Submariner in Tales to Astonish #70. He took over the title to share the title with the Incredible Hulk after they stopped publishing Giant Man and the Wasp. Namor took over the Submariner, so this is his first featured solo stories in the Silver Age for the Submariner, and I think it's really undervalued, and it's still cheaper. It's even cheaper to find in high grades compared to Submariner #1. But it came out 3 years before Submariner #1 did. So Tales to Astonish #70, first Submariner solo features. Next, we have Joker #1. For the life of me, I don't understand why this book isn't more popular, because the Joker is, I think, the most popular villain, not just only in the DC universe, but all of comics. I mean, you could just go to any Comic-Con with the cosplayers and you would probably see more Jokers than any other villain. And this character is just so popular. There's he's just probably the most popular, most recognized character in all of comics, in my opinion. I think it's hard to argue that. And this particular comic came out way back in 1975, and it still remains the first and only solo Joker comic in all of publication history. I mean, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, they've had several solo series in the years after this book, and they still have solo series coming out. But the Joker, I can't figure out why there isn't another Joker solo series. This one lasted, I think, about 9 to 10 issues. But this book came out in 1975, and you can get a 9.0 to 9.4 for, $150 or less. Graded. Raw, you can probably find it cheaper. So, there are other Joker Bronze Age books that are going for much higher, and but for some reason, this particular book, his first solo series, his only solo series ever, is still pretty cheap. So if you're a Joker fan, I would get a Joker #1. I mean, I'm high on this book. This is a really good series with, really good art. Dick Giordano, and it's written by Dennis O'Neil. So Joker #1, I feel, is a really overlooked and undervalued comic from the Bronze Age. Next we have Marvel Spotlight, #28. This is, Werewolf by Night is #32, the first appearance of Moon Knight. So that book is just super expensive in all grades. Well, mostly mid to high grades. That book is really, really super expensive. Even low grade is probably pretty expensive. But if you want an alternative, I would get his first solo feature in Marvel Spotlight, #28, which is first solo Moon Knight book, self-titled book and solo story. You can get a pretty high-grade copy for non-graded for under $100, and graded in 9.0s and above, you can probably still get it for about 150, 100, 125 to 100, 150 or 60. This is a very underrated character. I'd go for this if you don't want to spend the money for a Werewolf by Night #32. That's Marvel Spotlight #28, the first solo Moon Knight story and self-titled book. Finally, this is like a long shot. This isn't even a solo book. This is I'm going to get a little off the theme here. This is Spider-Woman #20. And if you're a big Spider-Man fan, like I am, who wouldn't want, if you're a Spider-Man collector, who wouldn't want to get the first ever meeting between Spider-Man and Spider-Woman? And Spider-Woman 20 is the very first meeting between Spider-Man and Spider-Woman. And you can get this book for, in graded, this one's a 9.6. I got it for like about $50. You can get a super high grade copy, graded or raw, of this particular book for a really, really low price. Collect what you want, but I think, to me, this is a very, very important book for Spider-Man fans, because it's kind of like Superman meeting Supergirl for the first time, or Batman meeting Batgirl. So why not have Spider-Man meeting Spider-Woman for the first time ever be just as important? It's a cheap book. It's a fun book. It's a cool battle cover. Yeah, Spider-Woman #20. It's it'll probably be cheap for a long time. I don't think it really has any potential, but as a fan of the character, this is a book I would go after. This is a fun book to have. It's a pretty cool story. I have a raw copy of this book as well. It's a pretty fun story, and it's the first appearance between the two spiders. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this video and find it informative. This is the Comic Book Ninja signing off.